Hey everyone, this is Nick from Mecha Warehouse, and today we're going to go through some redacted rules clarifications. About a week or two ago, whenever it was that we sent out the redacted boxes, we sent out to everybody participating in the contest a request for questions for rules clarifications, and figured it would be better to answer everybody's questions in one video. That way everybody's getting the same answers, seeing what everybody else's questions are, and trying to keep the clarifications as clear as possible by not answering the same question potentially slightly different ways to different people, and risk that there being a different interpretation of a slightly different worded answer, so to speak. So I'm going to jump right into these and answer these questions. We had a meeting, just not too long ago, a little bit earlier today, with all the judges to discuss all these and make sure we had good answers. But rather than give you the whole meeting and risk people being confused by the discussion back and forth, these are our official answers for these clarifications. So first up, why was the Tama2 chosen? And this isn't really a rules clarification question itself, but I did want to address it because I thought it would be a good one. And we chose the Tama2 for a variety of reasons. I thought it would be an interesting build, an interesting kit that's a little bit different for a lot of people, and kind of force you out of your comfort zone, and also have a ton of possibilities. I feel like there's a lot of things that can be done with it. I've got no shortage of ideas for things that I could do for my judge's build. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet, but I think there's a ton of possibilities with it, and I think it'll be really fun to see what everybody does with their Tama2. But for the actual rules clarifications questions, first up, can lighting, pose, and background be different for each photo? Yes. All those can be different. You use it to show off, different things that you've done with the build. Maybe you built your own custom gimmicks to it and you want to be able to show those off. Make sure those photos are unmodified though. No Photoshop, any of that kind of stuff. Next up, can a scene or diorama include another model? If so, will it be judged? And yes, it can. If you want to include another model for the open category, keep in mind if you're doing out of the box that you cannot, because out of the box can't include things that aren't in the box, essentially. The Tama2 should be the hero of the build, though. It should be the main thing. And it doesn't have to be the hero per se. It could be the villain. It could be whatever, but it should be kind of the focus of the attention and not an afterthought to allow you to show off some other completely different build and try to sneak that in for the contest. The Tama2 should be, like, philosophically the hero. Yeah. Doesn't actually have to be a hero. It could be a villain, but it has to be like the hero of the image, so to speak. It's got to be the center of the story.
The penultimate of my concern would be is that, like, if the Tama2 is the focus of the diorama, sure, I'm super cool with it, but if it doesn't end up being the focus of it, why am I judging someone else's?
That's why you're judging. Like, if the Tama2 is not the focus of it, then they've done it wrong.
And then one other general question here: when might we need to take work in progress photos? I think there'll be a few points when I answer some of these other questions that will be good ones to point out for this, but generally anything that you think might come into question about whether it is a rules violation or not, maybe you did something custom that maybe you think might not be allowed. Show us how you made it, and you don't need to submit those, but be ready to show us those, because if you think that someone might ask a question about, did you do this in a way that follows the rules, that'd be great, or important to do. Okay, next set of questions. These are all mostly category questions. Does something count as out of the box or not? Before I go in and answer any of these though, I will say, keep in mind, if you submit something with the intent of having it be out of the box and it doesn't meet out of the box, you won't be disqualified, but your build might get shifted over to the open category. So, if you're not worried about that, then don't worry about the rules that much, because then we'll just shift you over. You don't have to worry about being disqualified. So first up, can putty or cement be used to fill seam lines or hollow areas and out of the box? And yes, you can. You can do anything like that. You can't use putty, on the other hand, to add features. So don't try to build something out of putty or add details with putty, but feel free to fill in seam lines, things like that.
I think the putty is fine.
Yeah.
it's also going, using putty is also going to open you up to another level of scrutiny, because if you've used putty and you've used it poorly,
it's obvious.
It's obvious.
Right.
Yeah,
Can putty be used to refill accidental mistakes like seam lines? Same as before, same kind of thing, absolutely. Can an action base or stand be used to pose for photos and out of the box? And here I would also say yes, you can use an action base or stand to help pose your build for an out of the box entry. Keep in mind though that if you use a stand or a base, maybe like one of the 30-minute scene bases, that might bump you into the other category because they're more like a display kind of thing. And if you are, you paint your action base, that might also cause you to move up. If you're using an action base purely to hold your model in a particular position and it's, kind of out of the way, then that would totally be allowed though. Can the surface be altered without adding materials in out of the box, i.e. scribing, cutting, drilling, battle damage, etc.? And yes, you can make changes to the surface. You can do all those kind of things. As a general rule, if you think of changes being subtractive, you're removing material, removing things from the build, you're taking a part, leaving a part off, things like that will be allowed. You can't, for example, if you're doing battle damage, decide to use putty to add, outside bubbling for battle damage. You couldn't use cotton and an LED and out of the box to create, an explosion or something on there, but you can definitely take stuff away. Can 3D metallic stickers or photo etch be used in out of the box? And very similarly, are third-party decals and stickers allowed in out of the box? So third-party decals and stickers definitely will be, basically explicitly says that decals can be added for out of the box. Stickers, same thing. Photo etch, definitely not, because we're considering those parts. Most photo etch tend to be parts and add like features rather than just markings. And that tends to be the distinction we're going to make here. As for like 3D metallic stickers, it comes down to whether or not that is adding markings of some sort. Like Delphi Decal has metallic stickers, for example, that add metallic markings to a build, which is cool, totally allowed. If on the other hand, you wanted to try to use some sort of sticker that might add a vent or a fin or something, or thinking like the mono eye beads, you can't take the mono eye beads from Delphi that we offer and just bedazzle your Tama2 and expect it to still fit in the open or in the out of box category.
Well, they might need to just take a picture and like potentially something that they'll have to like send to someone and be like asking for clarification on this.
Yeah.
For us to go through and clarify it, we'll be here all day.
Can any amount of painting be done in out of box, i.e. like matching colors from the manual to entirely new paint scheme? Absolutely. Paint it any way you want, but keep in mind that any sort of painting technique that might add texture or build something onto it, like extreme texture especially, would not be allowed. You can't build up layers of paint to try to get around the rules of not using putty to add features. Same thing, you can't use paint to try to add features to an out-of-the-box build. Can parts be used in ways other than their originally intended purposes and out of the box? Like cutting up extra armor, for example. Yes, you can. This would be a perfect example of when you want to take work in progress photos. So those extra armor pieces in the Tama2 set that we're using for the Redacted box, there's two full colored sets. So I could totally see somebody using their extra set to cut up extra pieces. Totally allowed because they're not parts of the runner. And we explicitly stated you can't use the runner in this. So feel free to use those pieces. You definitely want to take pictures of those pieces though as you're working on them before they're painted to help illustrate if we ask the question that they were not, parts from another set or something that was brought in and added to it, that they were in the box originally. And then finally, does the background scene add points in out of the box? And very simply, not really. So we're not going to judge you in out of the box on the scene, right? We're not even open. We're not necessarily going to judge you. If you take the photo in your kitchen, that's totally fine. If you take it outdoors, that's totally fine. We're not going to hold that against you. We're not going to add points for it. Just keep in mind that a clean, good looking photo is always going to look better and probably do better. So even backgrounds, well-lit photos, things like that are going to help. If you put it in front of a bunch of clutter or in front of a mess, we might judge you based on how your living room looks or something like that, I suppose, but we're not going to judge it and hold it against your build. The better the photo looks and the more focused on the build that it can be, I think the better in general. But if you've got a poster of a cityscape and you take a picture in front of it, we're not going to judge you because you creatively put it in front of a cityscape picture, poster, or whatever it is.
I'm probably not going to judge you on your composition of your photos, so you don't have to care about like the rule of thirds. So.
Okay, so that's it for the questions we got. I do want to point out one other thing. There was some discussion going on in the Discord a day or two ago about essentially what comes down to, I think it's rule number 2, a completed entry should be recognizable as the original subject of the provided kit. There's no like percentage, there's no hard and fast objective. This is where that line definitely is. But we want to be able to recognize it as a Tama2 when all is said and done. So keep that in mind. And that basically the test for that is, do we recognize it? I think in general, based on discussions with the judges, we're going to probably rate higher builds that are more obviously the Tama2. The more you try to hide it and turn it into something completely different, and I don't mean necessarily warping it and changing it to be kind of a Tama2 something else. That's totally cool. But if you try your darndest to make it so we can barely tell it's a Tama2, that might actually hurt you in terms of the judging for the competition. So hopefully this helps. If you have any other questions, post them down in the comments. We'll try to review them as a team and answer them this will be like the repository for official answers to questions regarding the competition. If you've got things like metallic stickers that you might want to use and you want an opinion from the judges on them as whether they're markings or adding features, for example, send me an email, nick@mechawarehouse.com, and we'll gladly take a look at those. And I think that is it. So thank you for everybody who submitted questions. I really kind of paraphrased a lot of them and try to simplify, merge questions, things like that to make this video a little bit smoother. And yeah, thank you for watching. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what everybody does with these builds. Have a great week. See you next time.